Guy Stainer sums up the reaction.
This was a budget sweetener with a very bitter aftertaste. Trades Hall dumped 43,000 jelly babies on the lawns of Parliament. It says one for every job that's been lost under the Baillieu government.
The construction industry is losing jobs. The retail sector is losing jobs. There is no strong message from this state government being pro-jobs and pro-Victorian. He must change tack now or we're heading for a disaster.
1 in 8 public service jobs will go in the next 2 years.
Some of the most savage cutbacks we've seen for many, many years. To say this is a jobs-building budget is just a joke.
The Education Union says it fears for the future of TAFEs, with $300 million of funding slashed.
The most horrendous in the history of TAFE in this state.
The union says the government's priorities are all wrong.
We have seen the government slash funding to public schools while at the same time boosting by $240 million funding for non-government schools. This is warped priorities.
And there's not much to excite public transport users in Melbourne.
If you're on metro, there's very little for you. If you're on the buses, there's very little for you. If you're on the trams, there's nothing at all for you.
But not everyone was lining up with brickbats.
The government's managed to pull a rabbit out of the hat as well as keep the lid on in certain areas.
The AMA welcomed additional hospital funding at Charlton and Frankston, while business and employer groups have welcomed a 3% cut to work cover premiums.
Today's budget is a plus for business. It's welcome for its capacity to reduce government spending and the size of government.
And the RACV is delighted about the removal of level crossings in Springvale and Mitcham, but says increasing fines is merely revenue raising that helps keep a very finely balanced budget in the black. Guy Stainer, ABC News, Melbourne.
Now, just to wrap up, Francis, what about those public service cuts? Is there any indication yet exactly where the axe will fall?
Well, Ian, they'll be across the public sector, but the government isn't being any more specific than saying, again, that they won't come from frontline services, but we don't know much more than that. They are trying to soften the blow somewhat by saying that pay rises for MPs and senior bureaucrats will be capped at 2.5%. But for the first time today, we heard the government raise the prospect of possible forced redundancies. Previously, we've only heard of voluntary redundancies. So those will start happening from the 1st of July, but there could be more to come. The government-appointed Razor Gang is still trying to find efficiencies and savings in the public service. So that could mean potentially more job cuts, also the outsourcing of public services and potential asset sales. So that work will continue as the belt tightening continues, and we'll wait to see what impact that will have on the public service and on Victorians in general.
Francis, thank you. Our state political reporter, Francis Bell. And right after the news, Josie Taylor will interview Treasurer Kim Wells in a special edition of 7:30 Victoria.